Welcome to the What's Your Truth podcast, the show that not only showcases the best of independent artists, but also explores what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. Today on the show, we are very fortunate to have a true behemoth in the music industry, Grammy nominated and Platinum Award winning songwriter Harriet Schock. Now, Harriet's accomplishments and accolades could easily take up an entire podcast all by themselves. To hit a few of the high points, she is best known as the writer behind the Helen Reddy #1 smash hit Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady, which was the song that put Harriet on the map. Beyond this already phenomenal accomplishment, she also penned songs for the likes of Johnnie Mathis, Smokey Robinson, Lee Greenwood, Nancy Wilson, Manfred Mann, Roberta Flack, and many others. You may have also heard her songwriting talents on several television shows and feature-length films, including PBS series Jakers, The Adventures of Piggly-Winks, which airs in over 30 countries, and The New Adventures of Pippi Longstocking, for which she penned the ever-singable theme song alongside award-winning composer and producer Misha Siegel. As if all of this awesomeness wasn't enough, Harriet is also an incredible performer and recording artist in her own right. Having penned and recorded 7 albums throughout her decades-long career, she's also a regular live performer in her hometown of Los Angeles, and her band was also featured in Henry Jaglam's film Irene in Time, and she also guest starred in Jaglam's film Just 45 Minutes from Broadway. Appropriately, she is also the subject of an up-and-coming documentary titled Hollywood Town, The Harriet Schock Story, directed and produced by Tom Solari and in production as we speak. Aside from all of this, Harriet is also just a total peach of a gal and a wonderful friend, and I'm super excited to have her on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Harriet Schock.
Thank you, Johnny. Good heavens. Thank you very much.
Good heavens is right, man. It's incredible how much you can do in one career, but man, you're really pushing the envelope. So let's roll into it, shall we?
Hey, all right.
Amazing. So, Harriet, my first question is, how did you decide that you wanted to become a musician?
Well, I'm not sure I ever decided that. But at 4, my father taught me to play the piano by ear. He would just tell me certain chords, and eventually I would say, I know, I know. And so my sister would take piano lessons. I would hear her practicing, and then I'd go play the song by ear. So when it came time for someone to need a piano player, they said, well, I think she can play. And so it started that way, and it just eventuated into songwriting.
Wow. Awesome. And then what was the first experience you remember having with music, like at all?
Probably in this school, I went to this private girls' school, which was really, unlike many schools today, it really educated you in literature and in every um, subject possible. And one of the things we did was music, and we had, skits and things. And in college, the same thing. And somehow I just ended up playing and writing for those things. And I thought to myself, well, it'd be great to make a living at this, but I'm sure that would never happen. And I couldn't be more surprised that I actually did.
Wow. That's so funny to hear you say, because obviously you've done what you've done and you're kind of an icon. So it's kind of funny that that was your viewpoint, but maybe that was part of the puzzle. Who knows? And who are the biggest influences on your work and why?
Oh, my heavens. Well, I had notes somewhere I was going to refer to, but quite honestly, most of my influences are either literary or poetry. For instance, I love Rick Bragg. I'm reading his books right now. I find that if I'm reading, my songs get better. And then, of course, in poetry, I love Charles Bukowski and Billy Collins and Wisława Szymborska. Nobody can spell that, but she's Polish and she's brilliant. And then, musically, I grew up on the standards like Rodgers and Hart and Cole Porter and things like that. So when I hear songs, Sondheim now, and I hear Pasek and Paul, I don't consider myself a theater writer, even though I've written a lot for the theater, but that's the music that has moved me pretty much the most since the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love what you said about like reading as part of the inspiration. I mean, just the fact that that expands your vocabulary, I got to imagine has something to do with that, even. No?
Well, yeah, and then the school I went to, we actually had vocabulary lists, and I know words that I would never dare use because everyone would think, "Why is she saying that?" No one knows what that means, but I know those, and occasionally I get to throw one in.
That's awesome. The 50-cent words, you got to get them in when you can.
Yeah.
And what's the weirdest thing that's ever inspired you?
Hmm. Well, I've had some projects that are very strange. I mean, when I was asked to write the love theme song for The Last Dragon, which was a Motown film, I was assuming the viewpoint of a young African American man who was falling in love for the first time, studying Kung Fu, and was a virgin. So I thought, well, what do I have in common with this man? Well, I've fallen in love for the first time, but actually trying to get that viewpoint was pretty weird, but it really did inspire me. And the song I wrote with Misha Siegel, First Time on a Ferris Wheel, about 35 people have sung it, but at the time I thought, I'm doomed. I'll never be able to figure this out. And the same thing with Pippi Longstocking. She lives alone with a horse and a monkey. What do I have in common with this girl? But, I grew up very independent. And so I just assumed that viewpoint.
Right on. And I mean, I guess that's kind of almost the power of an artist, isn't it? Like the ability to assume another viewpoint and then turn that into something. I mean, that's almost the essence of what it is to be an artist. And wow, that you're able to do that with those kind of scenarios.
There's
So,
really,
how has your art influenced other people?
I guess you'd have to ask them. In my concerts, you keep stats. I don't keep stats about how many people come. I keep stats about how many people are crying. If the men aren't crying, I have failed horribly because, and it's not that I write sad songs. What I like to do is let people know that whatever it is I've been through, if they went through it, they're not alone because I also went through that. So if there's some truth that touches people, they sometimes cry, but it's not because things are sad. It's the recognition of an epiphany, you know.
Yes, I actually am so glad you said that. And I very much am of the same mind as you are. That was actually, you literally just voiced my fundamental purpose for myself as an artist is to create that level of understanding and duplication because it's true. People go through stuff. And for a lot of people, like art and particularly music, it's what they have. They gets them through and they don't necessarily understand why that is. And I think that's exactly why it is because they know they're not alone all of a sudden when they hear something that resonates.
That's
So
true.
that's incredible.
Hmm.
All right. And do you have any pre-show or pre-studio rituals?
Well, getting my band together is like herding cats. It is so hard to actually get a rehearsal, but they always manage to do it. So we have one coming up for a show I'm doing at the Coffee Gallery on the 26th of February. That's when the show is. And uh yeah, I don't plan anything the day of a show. This happens to be a matinee because I don't like going to Pasadena in the middle of the night, so I make them put me on in the daytime. And it's a Sunday. So I guess the one ritual would be I don't plan anything else. I go through the whole show at home and then we have a sound check and I vocalize every time. Right now I've just gotten over a cold, so I sound a little raspy. I'm hoping it will go away by the 26th.
Oh yeah.
I have something else between now and then, anyway, yeah, I don't have to sit in a certain chair or any of that stuff, but I definitely go through those things before a show and feel pretty compelled to do so.
Excellent. And then what risks, if any, have you personally taken for the sake of your music?
Well, okay. I came out here and well, first of all, I was married to an actor. That's a risk in itself. Okay. But that was not for my music. And so we broke up shortly thereafter. And I got a job as an advertising copywriter. And the biggest risk I think I took is quitting that job. And I did have a publishing deal at that point, but it didn't pay a living wage, you know. But luckily, I got a record deal shortly thereafter. I got a car because he got the car, so I was taking buses. So it was risky to quit that job. I
Yeah.
mean, I couldn't really do both because I think they expected me to write more songs than I was able to in my spare time being an advertising copywriter. So that was a risk. And moving to Los Angeles, because I'm from Dallas,
Hmm.
I was married to an actor, so it kind of got me out of town. I don't think I would have been had the gumption to actually leave my family. So things work out for the best, even if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, the path is not always a straight path, but whatever path you walk tends to be the one you're supposed to be on, doesn't it?
Bless the crooked road. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And what's the craziest risk you've ever seen another artist take for their craft?
Oh man. Um, I'm not sure I've ever observed that that someone else has taken some huge risk. Um, in a way, though, I have students who have just moved across the country with no money and no job or anything else. They'll move to Nashville. They're going to be a songwriter. I mean, that to me is crazy beyond belief. But, I admire it. I so admire it. And I know some students who have done that, but I'm not going to mention their names. But yeah,
It's fine.
I think that's a truly artistic decision. Probably they have more courage than I do.
Well, I mean, you did make it from Dallas to LA. That's over 1,000 miles. That's 1,000 miles worth of courage, at least.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. And then what's one thing about you? This question's kind of funny because it plays on your name too. What's one thing about you that would shock everyone to know? I didn't even think of that when I wrote the question.
That's funny. Um, Gosh, I am so known. I wonder if there's really anything that would shock anybody. um, I think, how in awe I am of the people who, like when I grew up listening to Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and Carole King and these people. You know, I can't believe people think I'm anything because to me they are God. You know what I mean? And so maybe people are unaware of how I really feel about them. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't think they'd be shocked though.
Right on. So that's actually a great answer, and I really appreciate that. And that's kind of been the one common thread I've experienced with, frankly, the greatest artists that I know, which you would definitely fall into that category, is that they tend to be very humble that way. Um, and I know you're not intending to do that to be humble to make people think that you're great, but it's true. Like there are artists I can think of, like Billy Sheehan's another one that's one of the most humble, great people on the planet, and he's also one of the greatest artists out there. You very much fall into that category, and it's a common thing, and I really think that's awesome.
Thank you. I did mean to mention when you asked me who my influences were, who inspires me. I love Pasek and Paul currently. I mean, yeah, Sondheim and Rogers and Hart and everything, but now I just cannot believe how good Pasek and Paul are.
Awesome. And then what's the one thing or the one tool that you absolutely cannot live without as an artist, and why?
My keyboard.
Fair
I,
play.
ever since I was a child, I will go to a piano. I feel uneasy being in a hotel that I can't get to a piano. It's like I don't play it every single day, but I have to know I can. you know. So yeah, I think my piano, of course, having Master Writer doesn't hurt, that program. Oh my
Yes.
God, I've written 4 musicals with that thing. But
Wow.
it's more of a tool. It's not a survival element. My piano is.
Yes. And that's a good point of differentiation too. The difference between a tool versus a survival element. And 'cause there's a lot of tools, but I get what you're saying. I love that you put it that way.
Mhm.
And then what has been the most difficult piece of music for you to create and why?
Mm. Where do you get these questions?
I had to dig deep for them.
Oh God. Um, well, I've worked on a number of Henry Jaglom films and I've done the music. And I'm not really an underscore person, but I've had to do that. So in many ways, that was very difficult for me because I had to look at the picture and make up something. One of the scores was all piano, and one was like a trio and stuff like that. So that to me, I don't see how people do that with car crashes and car chases and stuff like that. I'm not that kind of musician. But if melody is involved and they don't mind that it is a melody that is memorable, that
Right.
was the hardest thing because Henry would say, wait a minute, that's too memorable. It's got to be background music. And I'm thinking, I don't do that very well, but I
Yeah.
managed to get it
Awesome.
memorable enough.
Awesome. And then this is a fun question. If you were going to write a book about your career up to this point, what would you title it?
Oh God, I'm so glad Tom is making this documentary because everybody said I should write a book. I don't remember stuff, Johnny. I go, oh, that thing that happened then, but I don't remember when then is or who was involved. I'm really kind of liking what's happening now, and I don't remember all that. So what would it be called? Oh, my one of my favorite biography titles is oh God, what's his name? We have to look this up right now. He wrote Memoirs of an Amnesiac.
Oh,
Is that just
geez.
the best title ever? Oh, he was the guy who played, he was a comedian and he played the piano like way back when. It was, I will think of it before we finish because
I just looked it up. So, autobiography of composer, radio, and television personality Oscar Levant.
Oscar Levant, oh my God, isn't
There
that
you
great? Memoirs of an Amnesiac. That would be the title of my book because I don't remember any of that stuff. And luckily, Tom is taking care of it because I'll give him old pictures or something because I don't. It's that it's not that important to me. Some people just love the past. They dwell on it. They know. Remember, I have a friend who remembers stuff that when he was with me that I don't remember at all. Oh yeah, Elton John, and he had on this, and I went, I was there. Anyway.
That's awesome. But there's a lot to be said too for living in present time, and that's actually again kind of a refreshing viewpoint on that
Well,
for
I like
sure.
to think that's what it is, that I'm living in present time, not that I just can't remember Jack. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, what are your plans for world domination?
Oh, I'm, I've done a lot of things I'm not qualified for, but I think that's beyond my pay grade.
Well, fair point. As far as like things that you have in the hopper, though, like what kind of things? What do you have in store for the world?
Well, an interesting thing happened, when you make an independent documentary like Tom Solari is making, he raised money 3 different times. So
Wow.
yeah, and we made our goal each time. So they were not, $1 million things. But one of the perks, a perk is something you just offer people so they'll give you money.
Yeah.
One of the perks was Harriet will write a song for you. And it was 2,500. And I thought, well, no one's going to get that one. And 3 people did.
Oh
So
wow.
the person who did was Harvey Brownstone, who's an amazing interviewer. You should know him. He has an interview show. He was the first gay judge in Canada, and he's in Wikipedia. He's very well known, but now he has a talk show. So he interviewed me, and then he bought that perk, and I wrote his life, not his life story, but a very interesting story about his life, which he told me, and that's how I wrote it. So then he decided he loved this song so much. I got Gary Lynn Floyd, an amazing singer, to sing it because he's a man and it was in the first person. And even though I sang it originally, I wanted a man. And so he interviewed Gary then. And in talking to Gary, he said, you know, you do really well with Harriet songs. You should do a whole album of her. So now, if Gary had not liked that, that would have been a disastrous thing on a live show. But he said, oh, you know, let's do it. So now Gary is making an album called Present Shock,
Nice.
the songs of Harriet Schock by Gary Lynn Floyd. And I've heard some of it. They haven't finished any of it, but all of the basic tracks are gorgeous. I mean, his voice is so beautiful. And so that's coming out. And then I'm making an album with my cellist, my flute player, my violinist, my bass player, my backup singer, and I'm on keyboards. And that's coming out about the same time.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully the movie will have a premiere about that time. So it's crazy, but 2023, I have all these little, you know, trout lines that I look at every now and then and think, is it ready yet? Are we there yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a lot happening all in the same year. Goodness. That's exciting.
So that's my world domination.
That's a hell of a lot of world domination. I love that. And then I have one more question for you. And just to revisit the introduction I gave to this show, you know, this is a show not only about showcasing the best of independent artists, but also exploring what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. So, Harriet, what's your truth?
If someone asks me why I'm doing this, you know, I also teach songwriting, and that's one of my very favorite things in the world to do. But in both my performing, my writing, and my teaching, I think my purpose is to make people feel like they are heard. You know, that I get what they are going through. I may have even gone through it, but and I survived it. You know, it's like, if I can sew, you can sew. It's not quite like that, but it really sort of is. My purpose, I find people here and I want them to be a little bit higher up. And if what I can do that, then I have been successful.
Awesome. That's so beautiful. What a great way to wrap like what you do up in like a nice little bow. That's so perfect.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited about your new podcast, and I think it's going to be really successful. You certainly asked the difficult and interesting arcane questions. There's one of my words. But
Okay. Like that.
I love these questions. I've never been asked anything like this. So this was really nice.
Wow, well, that's a compliment. Thank you so much. I'm glad, and thank you so much. It's an honor. It's not every day you get to talk to a living legend. It's not hyperbole. It's actually true. See, there's one of my 50-cent words.
That's so nice of you to say. I'm just going through my life day by day like everybody else, and that anyone thinks of me that way. You know, who is it who said Lucille Ball's husband, you know, Desi Arnaz. They
Mhm.
said, how do you make it in this industry? He said, live long enough. So apparently I've lived long enough that people are now calling me a legend, but you know, that probably is only for that reason.
Hey, but there's a lesson in that too. I mean, persistence has a lot to do with it. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, even that is it's setting the example of doing that, and with your integrity intact too, which is another point. Is that from what I've seen, your integrity has always been fully intact with what you've done, which
Thank
is
you.
pretty rare, actually.
Well, I've had a lot of help with that.
Yeah. So again, thank you. Thank you for being awesome, for being
Thank
here. And before we do go, I did want to give you 60 seconds. If there's anything else you wanted to plug, anything Harriet Schock. I know we talked a little bit about the movie, but anything else you wanted to plug? 60 seconds. Floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I do have a number of shows coming up. I also host a showcase at Celebrity Center called Snap Sunday night at the Pavilion. We have that coming up on the 19th. And on the 26th, I'm doing a show in Pasadena at the Coffee Gallery backstage. And yeah, and I have a class that just started. I teach Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday afternoon. But people are from, Thursday afternoon is for people from Austria and England and New York and stuff because it's too late for them at night. So I guess I'm very fortunate that I love everything I do. So I mentioned pretty much all of it. And I want to thank you not only for having me here, but for everything you do, Johnnie, and all of your music and all of your inspiration for others.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Wow. That's humbling. I thank you so much. That means you have no idea how much that means to me.
Oh, thank you.
My gosh. Well, cool. Well, again, Harriet, thank you again for being here. And everyone, this has been the What's Your Truth podcast. We'll see you on the next episode. Later.
Yeah, you follow your own rules and you preach them on to me. But you don't think before you act, and you ain't got no business with me. You don't know. But then what's your truth? Oh, what's your truth?